Welcome to Veterans AZ, a program that celebrates Arizona's veterans and offers insights into programs and organizations that serve them and our uniformed service members. That introduction is especially accurate for this episode. We sat down with Roxanne, Flynn, and Donna too from the Military Partnership Program at HonorHealth. Since it began in 2004, the program has trained more than 3,500 soldiers and airmen in trauma and deployment skills. Join us to learn more and get a glimpse inside the innovative training center on the HonorHealth Scottsdale Osborne Medical Center campus. Hello, I'm here with Roxanne, Flynn, and Donna too from HonorHealth, specifically from the HonorHealth Military Partnership Program. So thanks so much for joining us on Veterans AZ.
Yes, thanks for having us.
It's great to have you here. We're looking forward to learning more about this really innovative program that's been part of our community for quite a while and is a real difference maker for all of our military service members. Before we jump into the conversation, I'd just like to know a little bit more about each of you, your backgrounds and how you ended up being part of this program. So Roxanne, maybe we could start with you.
Sure, thanks. I'm a native Arizonan. I have been a nurse for 30 years, 27 of it this October will be at HonorHealth. And I did run some pre-hospital. I worked for a fire department and ran on an ambulance taking care of patients for about 11 years. So that's where my pre-hospital medicine comes from to help with this program.
Outstanding. Well, Donna, how about you?
So I am also a nurse by trade. I was a nurse on the civilian sector, and then when I was about 27, I decided to join the Air Force. And so I was in the Air Force 1999, so started then, and things got real busy for the next few years during my Air Force service. And then I retired just last year after 24 years in the military. And I now work at HonorHealth as my post-service employer.
So did your military service have anything to do with where you've ended up in HonorHealth?
Absolutely, it did. I was lucky enough to get selected for a military-civilian partnership internship. And so I came here. I was only supposed to be here for 10 months, and then I was going to be, shipped off to, someplace on the East Coast in some cubicles. And while I was here during my internship, they decided they were expanding the training platform that the Air Force had here at HonorHealth, and they needed a leader. They needed someone to have oversight of the instructors that were embedded here. So I stayed, and they said, if you stay, you can retire here. So I stayed for 3 years, and then at the end of my service and retired, I was able to start with HonorHealth.
Well, that's outstanding. So you're both obviously perfect people to talk about the HonorHealth Military Partnership Program. So can you give us the elevator speech? What is this program?
Sure. Basically, the military partnership is a training opportunity for military and first responders to train up on trauma medicine. Good field care means everything for a good patient outcome. So it doesn't matter if it's the military, it's law enforcement, or fire, they need to have good training for that patient outcome.
And so an outcome of this program is important not just for the military community, but for civilian communities as well, for the rest of us.
We're serving the whole community. HonorHealth serves the whole community, and having good care outside of the hospital is what allows us to take good care of patients.
Well, that's really outstanding. What is the origin story? Mm-hmm. How did this all start?
It's interesting. In about 2004, the National Guard came to our trauma director and said, we need to get some more hands-on rep. We need practice with real patients. So they did a 2-week pilot, and it looked pretty good, but they hadn't done anything for a couple years. And then two things converged at the same time. The Air Force was looking for a place to put their new grad nurses in a clinical setting, and the readiness program that we run, the National Guard was looking for some place to have their military medics get trauma refresher. So we built an immersion program around 2 weeks of their annual training that they have, and then we got a congressional appropriation to stand up the first part of the lab. So that's actually the only money we've ever accepted from the government or the military to train their folks. So we've been training for 15 years now in our building at HonorHealth Osborne.
And is this an example, one of the really amazing things about the U.S. military historically has been its ability to learn on the fly and identify where it needs to get better. So is this an example where we're kind of back into a new kind of war, and they were realizing that that their medics needed some real trauma training?
Absolutely. The longer we're out of conflict, our skills go down. And it was a new frontier, right? When Afghanistan kicked off, Iraq kicked off, different types of injury patterns, right? A lot of IEDs, explosives, and injury patterns were different. Moving people from areas that had limited medical capability and be able to get them long distance to higher level care. So I think the military did a lot to develop new techniques, new processes to save lives that ever developed before. And we were able to bring those back to the civilian sector. Also being able to bring our civilian guard and reservists who worked on the outside and bring them into the force during those deployments really helped bring some of that higher level care. So it really was that symbiotic relationship between the civilian platform and the military platform, improving care delivered in the field.
It's interesting because the only place that you see battlefield medicine type injuries outside of the battlefield is a level 1 trauma center. Those injuries, it may be a crush injury from a Humvee or it may be a crush injury from a car accident. They're very similar injuries. So by putting the military in a level 1 trauma center, they're seeing most of the injury patterns that they would see in the battlefield. So HonorHealth has 3 level 1 trauma centers, so we have the ability to move our staff around and to really immerse a lot of people from the military into our setting.
Well, and that's great because obviously in the military, we train like we fight, at least we try to. And so this is a case of trying to put those folks into that kind of environment. Very innovative. So can you describe for us what it's like for someone going through the program? How long is the program? Where do they start? What do they go through? Where do they finish?
I'll start, and then Donna, you can add on. We actually have 6 unique military programs at HonorHealth. So we have 3 that belong to the Air Force, and I'll let Donna talk about those 3. And then we have the Army PAs also come and do their rotations for between usually 30 to 60 days. We have the National Guard, a new program that have embedded 2 of their trauma nurses in our Deer Valley Hospital, and they send their military medics there to precept with their own staff. So they become HonorHealth staff, but they're National Guard staff. And so that's been a really great program. And the third is our readiness program. It's kind of our bread and butter. It's for that military medic mostly. We do, and they're for reservists and National Guard. So it's a 2-week immersion program where they come for the 2 weeks. They get 6 clinical days. They get some high fidelity simulation, fire ride along, and then some of them go to the burn center. And then finally, they get 2 days of trauma immersion where the military medics get to talk to subject matter experts and work on task trainers, brush up their skills on airway or bleeding control. So they get all of those from the experts, and then they end up with taking some continuing education credits back with them for their certifications.
Wow. Tell us more.
So the Air Force has 3 nursing programs that are embedded at HonorHealth. So these are curriculum-based programs. The first one is the Nurse Transition Program. So these are brand new nurses that have just come in the Air Force for the first time. And so they come here for 10 weeks of kind of that high acuity patient experience and training before they go to their first duty hospital. Because usually those facilities are a lot smaller and demographic-wise, a little healthier population. So getting that kind of under their belt before they go to their first duty station. The second program we have is the Critical Care Emergency Trauma Program. And so these are Air Force nurses who have been interviewed and selected to become either ICU nurses or emergency department nurses. So they come here. It is now a 4-month program. So they come for 4 months. They have some curriculum-based stuff that's done here, but a lot of it's just getting on the floors with those nurse preceptors from HonorHealth and training on the floor and delivering that patient care level. And then our third program is perinatal. So the perinatal program is over at Shea. It is a 17-week program, and so these are Air Force nurses who want to be OB nurses. And so they train over to Shea, which is a wonderful facility for them. They deliver almost 600 babies a month at Shea. In the Air Force, they're delivering maybe a few babies a month in their facilities. So it's great. They come in here, they're able to get delivery time, postpartum time, baby time, a little time in the NICU, doing cesarean sections in the OR. So they're highly, highly trained and competent when they leave here as OB nurses. So
So the military must be quite happy with these programs. Are they growing? Are they evolving?
They'd like to. We have a pretty small team, and we run 3 different programs under the military partnership umbrella. So we're having some conversations about possibly doing that, but our bandwidth is a little tight, and we want to make sure we still serve the people in the community and our first responders as well. So it's kind of a balance. And yes, we'd love to have more staff and serve more people.
So you mentioned the high fidelity simulator, I think you called it. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like?
Yeah, our high fidelity simulators are very realistic mannequins. And so there's different types. We have an OB one that can deliver a baby. They can do a C-section on that, so that's great for perinatal nurses. It's also great for our paramedics and even police officers who may have to have an imminent birth somewhere to be able to get that, first-time exposure. The one that we work with most of the programs is going to be our Trauma HAL. So Trauma HAL can have amputations, it can drop his lung, it can have pupils that are unequal so that we can be looking for head injuries, and it gives it very realistic. So they can actually hear the heartbeat, they can hear the lungs, they will actually bleed. So they have that connection between their mind and their hands on what they should be doing. If it's bleeding, I need to put a tourniquet on. If the lung is dropped, what do I need to do to reinflate that lung? The mannequins can also talk to them. They can say, I'm short of breath, I'm short of breath, and that will help them with their focused assessment to decide how to treat that patient.
We've also enhanced the environment so it feels real. We have netting hanging from the ceiling. We have battlefield noise, helicopters, gunfire. So all of that distraction is actually really adds to the experience and helps them feel like, no, they're just not caring for a mannequin. This is a patient, and they get in that space in their head and do a better job and get really engaged.
And it also helps them desensitize, right? Because we don't want the first time that they're under that kind of stress to be in the battlefield, when they can work through that distraction of that noise, the sound in there, and they build some muscle memory so that when they get into the battlefield, they're able to kind of block out some of those noises and really concentrate on the patient care.
Well, again, it's really an incredible program. What has it been like for the HonorHealth team to have sort of this regular influx of military members really embedded as part of your staff?
It has been wonderful. I think, first of all, when you bring the military in any space, their ethics, their ethos, everything is a little bit higher, I must say, compared to the civilian setting. And so that just, all ships rise with the tide, and they really enhance a unit. But what I have always seen, and what's really neat, is the pride and the patriotism that the preceptors have to be able to participate in their education. It's very meaningful to them that they gave this part of themselves to make this military member better, and they know if they get deployed or anywhere that they serve, that they're going to be better because of that experience.
And I would say from the military aspect, I came into this as in a uniform member, and the feedback we get from our students that do come here with it is that they are welcomed in. They come in and they are treated professionally, and they know that their skill set is worthy of being there at HonorHealth, and so they grow them and develop them in their time here. And a lot of them don't want to leave when they're done. They say, I may come back and work here someday, and so that's really great that they feel so part of the team in such a short period of time.
The patients actually like it too. This is a very veteran-friendly town, and we have a lot of veterans that are patients or veteran families. And when they see somebody come in with rank and they have lots of questions and they're so excited about having those caregivers, it's their tribe, right? And they really relate to them, and it's a really neat experience for both the military member and the veteran.
So, is there a particular success story that maybe sticks out to you?
I think we have a couple. We could probably spend all afternoon
talking about that, yeah.
But one that I want to highlight, and it's not my story, so I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but this is a very unique thing that happened during more the Iraq-Afghanistan war, is that we had a HonorHealth surgeon from one of our locations who is a flight surgeon in the Air National Guard. And so he was downrange and he was transporting, so air vacuuming a critically injured special operator. And he was matched up with a young medic. He called him a kid, so he's just a young medic with him. And they had to stabilize this person and take care of them all the way to Germany. So they get to Germany and they drop the patient off and were able to transport them off to the facility, and he goes back to talk to this young medic, and he's like, man, you did a really great job today. I really want to, was impressed with your skills. And he said, I just finished my readiness training at HonorHealth at Scottsdale, Arizona to prepare me for this deployment. And he's like, that's my hospital, that's my system. And he wasn't even aware that we had a military partnership program like that. So that was very eye-opening for that, but it also shows the global care, the global impact that this training in Scottsdale, Arizona has on that theater.
Well, and think of all the stories we don't even know and don't even get back to us about that. The one I wanted to share was about Scottsdale Police Department. We do a lot with Scottsdale Police and Scottsdale Fire, and frankly, all of the different agencies. But they received tourniquets as part of a grant. But they got no training. So those tourniquets, 3 years later, they're like nowhere, right? They're in lockers or trunks, and they had never used them. They had no value for them. So they came to us and said, would you please teach us how to use these tourniquets and if there's value to us? So we did a simulation with them. We put them in a classroom and we taught them how to use their tourniquets and actually had them deploy it several times. And then we collected some demographic information about each officer. And then they went and we designed a high fidelity simulation in their shoot house where they actually, the premise was a CVS pharmacy had an active shooter. So they had to go in and eliminate the threat, and then they had to go find their injured officer that had called it in and had been shot. Well, that injured officer was actually our mannequin, and so when they found him, they had to, someone had to put a tourniquet on him because he was bleeding to death. And the other officer had to call fire and maintain cover, maintain a scene safety. What we found was the officer that put the tourniquet on had an average heart rate of 108, where the other officer had an average heart rate about 98, which was statistically significant. But the really cool thing about all of that was it changed their culture, because now every Scottsdale police officer wears a tourniquet on his vest, and they saved 11 lives in 3 years before fire got there, and that's just to the Osborne Hospital. So they were actually saving lives before fire could get there. And if you really need a tourniquet, you need it now. You can't wait 4 minutes for fire or whatever the time is. Even as fast as they come, it's not enough. So it's been really great to see that happen, and I really appreciate what they do for us.
Roxanne, could you please tell me a little bit more about your relationship training community fire departments, specifically through the Paramedic Academy?
Absolutely. So the Valley has created a multi-agency paramedic academy. All of the fire departments need paramedics, and they found that it's a smart business to put them together. And the HonorHealth Military Partnership, we actually help with their final exam, which is a large mass casualty. We moulage their victims, or we bring our mannequins, and they get that opportunity to save lives in a safe environment, right? They're not going to hurt anybody. These aren't patients.
And the great thing is those paramedics directly bring those patients to HonorHealth. So what we can do to train those paramedics in the field and increase that high survivability rate of the patients that they're bringing to us.
Because we all live all over the Valley, and we all want a well-trained paramedic to arrive at our door if we call 911. So our little bit that we can do for them will help them with their training and make sure that they're confident and competent in their medicine.
Well, it makes all the sense in the world too, because in the Valley we have the automatic aid system. So we want all of the paramedics from all of the different fire departments trained at the same standards, and all the fire departments do a great job with that. It's great to hear about your partnership helping them elevate the level of that training as well. Well, I think that's such a great example. I mean, we're talking about the Military Partnership Program, but really you're demonstrating a true community partnership. And the community benefits. So outstanding. I love learning that, and as a City of Scottsdale employee, I didn't even know about the Scottsdale Police story. So I'm going to have to circle back with PD and learn a little bit more there. It's just great to have an organization like HonorHealth in our community, so committed to partnership, and our residents and our visitors and our businesses all benefit. And most people don't even realize that it's happening.
That's true.
So where does the program stand now? We talked a little bit about maybe a desire to expand. What's the diagnosis at this point?
It's a good question, and I guess it's mostly unknown. We would like to expand where we can. We joke that we take on the widows and orphans of the community that they can't afford training or they don't have an option for training. So those are sometimes our target audiences. One of the things that we're lucky enough is our program is supported philanthropically. So the foundation raises funds to support the military partnership, and so we can give all that training away for free. Which is a really neat thing. So if we have a small community, a senior center, or a church that can't afford training, or historically, rural Arizona, we do a lot of training with the small fire departments up there because a lot of fire departments are volunteer. So training might not be something that they can afford a lot of, but we can either go to them or they come to us and we are able to train those folks. So I'd love to see us expand a little more. For our staff, we're a little maxed out. But that we rarely turn anybody away. That's our problem, We don't want anybody to go without training. And even sometimes we put on extra military training if we find out like the National Guard's going to be deployed, for example, and they'll call and say, can we get our medics in? And we're like, yeah, absolutely you can. And we will add some additional training to make sure that they're spun up and confident and competent to go out in that battlefield.
And I think on the military aspect too, we just got the Navy. We've been trying to work for years to get a contract with them to start getting more Navy corpsmen here to do some training with us. And we're always in talks with Air Force leadership, likes to come and do site visits because they do have embedded instructors here. We just had some on site yesterday. And talking about possibilities, growing medical technician programs, respiratory therapy in the future. So we try to keep in them with their planning too. What's their 2-year, 5-year, and 10-year goals so that we can grow with them.
Well, what else? What else should people know about the Military Partnership Program?
Let's see. I think that I have probably the most dedicated, well-trained, but sometimes feral children, staff. When you deal with creative people, they're always stretching the limits. And I will tell you that the mass casualty that they do for the military, it's their final exam for the 2-week readiness program, is probably the best mass cal I've ever seen. And it takes our team, 2 hours to set it up? And 2 hours to not only do the simulation, but do the debrief, which is one of the most important parts. You have to talk about what actually happened to really hardwire that learning for the adults. And it takes them another 2 hours to clean it up. They could do a much smaller drill that wouldn't waste as much of their time, but they really want them to have a really tough experience. They want them to critically think through anxiety and really be able to give good care, even though they're feeling that pressure. And we evaluate everybody that comes to the military partnerships. We make sure we're doing the right thing. Do we need to do something different? And usually it's just spot on. They really love that mass casualty part of the whole military partnership program. So,
I think the other thing we need to highlight too is the volunteer nurse preceptors that HonorHealth has.
Yes.
They step forward and they make sure that they get the right training and the right encouragement to do the skills that they can. And so last year, how many hours or preceptor hours do you think we had last year?
Last year we had 70,000 preceptor hours for the military. That is equivalent to $3.8 million of gift to that program. And that's just a single year. Yeah.
So it's a team effort, right? This is not 1, 2, it's not just our staff doing this. It's the whole HonorHealth system being behind us and supporting these programs.
It's a whole village. And you got to say that about our executive leadership too, because honestly, we don't make any money. Our ROI is people saving lives downrange or in the field and us getting a better patient and our community cared for. So, that's expensive, right? And you have to take that into consideration. So we're lucky, like I said, we have good support from our leadership and that we have the foundation that can help us fund all of the equipment that we need to train people. Yeah.
Well, as we know, in a trauma type situation, every second counts. And through this partnership, through HonorHealth's commitment and your all's commitment to training our first responders and our service members, you're making sure that they can maximize every second in those scenarios. So thank you so much for what you do. It's really such an amazing program. I want to shift gears here for a second, and I know that Donna, you're the SkillBridge lead.
Yes.
At HonorHealth, and so this is a program that I don't know how many folks in the civilian world know about, and perhaps even in military circles. But can you talk a little bit more about the SkillBridge program and what it does to help bring service members who are leaving their military service into civilian employment?
Absolutely. So the Department of Defense SkillBridge program is focused on those members who are still on active duty but separating, either if they're separating or retiring and returning to the civilian workforce. Very unique skills in the military, and sometimes they match up great to the civilian work center, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes there isn't a need in the civilian sector for a munitions expert. So this program is great. It helps them find DoD vetted employers. So to participate in the program, the DoD has to vet you and say, yes, you can take on internships. So during their last 180 days, the members can apply for different internships with SkillBridge providers. This is great for training and job experience both, so that they can make that transition smoothly over with the high probability of employment. So that's kind of the goal for these internships, is to have that full-time paying job at the end. Different services, different lengths, right? It may be 60 days, it could be 120 days that they're able to do that. The nice thing about this program is because they're still on active duty, they're still getting paid by the military, they're still getting their housing allowances, and it's at no cost to the employer. So that you can bring them in, train them, and it's not coming out of your bottom line for that time. We've had a very successful program here. We are very proud of our program and our ability to bring veterans into our workforce. We started developing our program late 2022, and we actively started placing members in January of 2023. In the last year and a half, we have had 15 members placed, so 15 internships. 100% of them have been offered positions at the end of their internship. And we actually have 2 that are transitioning now from SkillBridge status to full-time employers in the next 2 weeks. And we have 2 more that are actively in the program. So right now, retainability of the members that we've hired full-time is 100%. So it's really great. Another thing that we do here at HonorHealth that I think is very beneficial for that veteran is that we give them a veteran battle buddy. So when they come into the SkillBridge program, we match them up with someone in the organization who's a veteran who successfully transitioned themselves and can be that support person for them. It may be helping them understand the HonorHealth way. It may be putting things in context from, okay, in the military, you had this kind of chain of command, or you reported it like this. This is how we do it on the HonorHealth, so that they can have that. The feedback I've gotten from the participants are, it's just nice to know that someone has my back. When they leave that military culture, it's a family. They have had that family. And so to be able to transition over and know that someone has your back, there is someone there who's looking out for you during that time is very important. We actually had one member came into SkillBridge, and his wife delivered his baby 5 weeks early. So here he had moved from his duty section, came here, and his veteran battle buddy was checking on him, making sure that him and his wife were doing great and how the baby was doing and bringing gifts over. And it's that culture we want to bring. And I think a lot of our SkillBridge members that come and are interested in HonorHealth is because of the culture. The mission, vision, goals of HonorHealth are very similar to core values, and so they relate to that. And a lot of people moving from the military to the civilian sector, culture matters, and they want to work in a place that people enjoy working at. And so that's a big draw that we get in, is they, through word of mouth or experiences with the system itself, is I want to work somewhere like that, because dignity and respect. I was treated with dignity and respect, and that's important to them.
That's a really great way to think about it in terms of helping them find that culture in civilian employment, and I love the battle buddy idea. What sorts of jobs are included in your SkillBridge program?
So we're unique. How we do our SkillBridge is any open position could become a SkillBridge internship. Not everyone does it that way, and it's not right or wrong, it's just different, and that's how we've chosen to do it. We get a lot of people. I've had 2 air traffic controllers, but really in their heart, they want to be healthcare. One was that we placed was already on the waiting list to be a rad technician, so to work in radiology. And so this was his introduction into healthcare, is doing SkillBridge and continue to working at HonorHealth until he graduates. And then we can grow him into his next position. So I interview all of our SkillBridge members and say, you know, what is it that you have for skill set? What's transferable skills? And what's your goal? What's your passion? And a lot of them may be working on degrees. And so we say, okay, what's a smart job for you that will grow you into that position once you graduate? Or some people are like, I don't know what I want to do yet. And okay, well, what's your, you know, what do you have a passion for? What do you really enjoy doing? And then we try to find those types of positions for them and let them grow. And retainability is important, right? We want to bring someone into our culture, into our family, and we want to be able to grow them and keep them for many, many years.
Donna was our first SkillBridge. She left the military and was our first SkillBridge intern, and then to employment. But you can tell the passion that she has for it. And I think she has unprecedented success in SkillBridge. She's actually mentoring 4 other hospitals on how to do this work. And she really teases out all those other duties as assigned to make sure that their resume is complete. Because it's interesting, because they'll put their military jobs on there and leave off all of this. He's the IT expert for his unit, but he didn't put that on there. And so by her intake and interview process, she's really able to enhance their resume to their true self. And then that's the way she's able to place them in healthcare, because a lot of them, most of them are not in healthcare.
Yeah, the most that we have placed are not in healthcare. It'd be easy if I got a nurse and I put them into a nurse slot. It'd be easy. But a lot of these people are coming to healthcare for the first time with it and value. And we, you know, hospital systems are kind of like small communities, right? We need IT support. We need facility management. We need all those jobs and all of their skill sets, their work ethic. You don't have to be clinical to work at HonorHealth.
Well, that sounds like a great program, and congratulations on your success with it. And thanks for sharing that to help us understand a little bit more. I know that here at the City of Scottsdale, we have a small number of SkillBridge slots, and I think we're looking at growing those. And I know this is a program that's available to all kinds of different organizations. Yes. So thanks for talking about it. It helps to learn a little bit more about how it works. Anything else we've missed? Anything else we should touch on either of these topics or anything different?
I think part of my SkillBridge too, as I failed to mention, is we do work with other partners in the community. So we work with Arizona Coalition of Military Families. That's a big partner for us. They can help veterans write their resumes. They can help them with interview skills. They even have allowances for professional attire if that's something that they need. So those are great resources that also our veterans can utilize. US Vets is another great organization. We have it in the local. So I think connecting our veterans with those services to help them grow their careers and employment opportunities is also essential.
Well, and I just am grateful, honestly, to get to do this work. This is such meaningful work for us. Not only training the military in trauma, but the SkillBridge program. We actually get to help people. We actually touch their lives, and we may not know how we impact them later. We get a few stories, we don't get a lot, but we know that the work is value added, and we're just so appreciative we get to do it.
Yeah, and it's a great feeling coming to work every day and knowing what you do has a positive impact on someone's life.
Well, thank you so much. It's really clear to me that, you know, it's easy for people to say they support the military, but to put your money where your mouth is and to put your blood, sweat, and tears into that, it's very clear that you both do that, and that HonorHealth is really a committed community partner for our military, for our local law enforcement, fire departments. So thank you so much for being here with us and for telling us more about it. It's really great to hear about, and we hope the viewers appreciate learning about these great programs.
Thank you for letting us share. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thanks for watching Veterans AZ. You can find past episodes along with news and resources for Arizona veterans at veteransaz.org.